Good morning or good afternoon, everybody, and welcome along to my imaginatively titled video, Some Tips for Success with Transactional Writing. Thrilling, I know. So I've made a little video that is just designed to help you out with tips and I suppose a bit of revision really on how to approach transactional writing tasks in the exam. So here we go. Let's have a whiz through and see what we can come up with. So first of all, what is it then? Well, transactional writing, as I say on the screen, is non-fiction writing that intends to communicate information between individuals or groups. You will usually be asked to write to persuade or inform or argue or something like that, okay? And it will usually take the form of something like a letter. You might get a formal letter or an informal letter. You may be asked to write a speech. You could be asked to write an article for a magazine or a newspaper or something like that. You may well be asked to write a review, or it could be what used to be known as a leaflet and is now known as a guide. You may be asked to write a guide. So a few facts then on this section of the exam. You'll start, obviously you'll do the reading section and then you get to the writing section. So there are, and I've done some jazzy numbers for you, there are 2 writing tasks. There are 20 marks per task, and then it's suggested that you take around about 5 minutes to plan what you're going to write. After that, give yourself about 25 minutes to write for each of them. And then after that, remember, and apologies for that's not a very jazzy number, that one, but it was the best one I could find. Try to write 300 to 400 words per task. There is a word count. You will be expected to hit it, and you will be penalised for not hitting it. Okay, so really important. Before you start and before I start with this, again, apologies for the image. Not very good, but it was the best one I could find. So things to think about then before you start. Remember, first of all, you have to do both tasks. Okay, there will not be an either or on that side of the exam. You've got to do both tasks. Please, please, please do both tasks. Otherwise, you're just throwing away 20 marks, aren't you? Remember then to highlight the keywords in the task, things that suggest the purpose, so what it's there for, the audience, who it's aimed at, and the form, what it's actually asking you to do. Is it like writing a letter, writing a review, writing a lively article, or a guide? Before you start then, take time to plan. Okay, only 5 minutes, but take time to plan. Form a clear plan. Think about what you'll write about in each paragraph or each section. What language features you might need. The order of the kind of the content you're going to put in there as well might be a good thing to plan. But remember, don't spend too long. But a plan's a good thing. It tells an examiner that your writing had some form of direction. Okay, and I know years and years ago, when I started teaching, we used to always say as well, if you don't get finished, a plan is a good indicator to an examiner of what was going to happen in the rest of your writing. And it might just be that they might look at that. If you don't get finished, of course you will, because you'll watch this video. But they'll look at that and go, all right, I can see where it was going to go. Okay, and they might be able to give you the odd mark or two just for that. So with planning then, why bother planning? First of all, it allows you time to think. It allows you time to jot down useful phrases, useful words. It might be a line that you want to include or something like that. It might be an imperative or a rhetorical question you come up with. And if you're like me, you might come up with it and then you might start to think of other things, and before you know it, you can't remember what the rhetorical question was in the first place. So those little gems that you come up with, planning allows you to sort of get those down. It allows you to think about the structure of what you do as well. So what will go in each paragraph, or at least your first 2 or 3 paragraphs anyway, remembering that you've only got 5 minutes to plan. And it also allows you to think about the form of the task and what's needed. So if it's a letter, remembering where you've got to put an address, where you've got to put a date, how you're starting, how you're finishing, your salutation, that type of thing. How an article should look, how a speech should look. maybe your plan should be on writing a speech. Please don't start your plan with dear sir or madam, which seems to happen quite a bit. That would be a letter, kids. Don't start a speech like that. Things to think about with planning: content. What angle or view are you going to take in order to write enough? What order will your content take? What language features do you need to use that fit your purpose? So if it's writing to persuade or argue a point of view, things like alliteration, imperatives, rhetorical questions, rule of three, repetition. I always say, if you're really stuck in a plan, just write down the language features you need to include, and you've got a little tick list really, and you know if you're using those things, you should be scoring marks. How will you present your work? Is it a letter, a review, an article? So how is it going to look on a page? What types of things do you need to remember? What will you start with? How can you engage the reader? And then also, as well, how will you conclude your work? How will you leave that lasting impression? All those things can be thought about in a plan. Planning, work out in advice what kind of planning works best for you. Okay, I was always and still am a fan of a bullet point list. I'm a fan of many other things. I'm not that dull. A bullet point list is like my favourite thing in all the world, but that's my go-to planning style, if you like, because it means I can scribble stuff down, but I've got a bit of an order. But you might like flowcharts, mind maps, that type of thing. There's loads of different ways out there to plan stuff. Just remember to make it stick to 5 minutes if you can. Moving on then, top tips for writing. These aren't the only top tips, they're just sort of some that I came up with. So first of all, remember to use a range of appropriate and well-selected details to support your writing. So think about your content, think about your language features. Make sure you write an engaging intro. I didn't realise I put the word intro there, that's not like me. Introduction, and a conclusion that leaves your reader thinking. Okay, so grab the reader with your introduction and leave them thinking about what you wrote with your conclusion. Possibly as well, link the two together. It might start and finish with the same rhetorical question. Sequence your ideas carefully, so the most powerful ones have got the maximum impact. Okay. Think about where you place certain arguments within the sort of structure of, I don't know, your letter or your review or whatever it is you're writing, your lively article. Try to include a controversial idea. You want to stand out. Again, something I always tell students is that you're in an exam hall and there's kids all over the place in the exam hall. They're writing these same tasks, and an examiner is going to mark the same thing time and time again. It's the ones that stand out that probably are going to come up with the big marks, unless they stand out for all the wrong reasons, of course. But yeah, that's not one of my top tips. Don't stand out for all the wrong reasons. And finally, always leave time to proofread through what you've done. It's a battle. Some people just write and write and write, and you find, when you're told to put your pen down, you're still trying to sneak in a few extra letters or words. Try and get it to an end with even just a minute. You might just spot, a silly error that you've made. You might be able to spell that word that you've misspelled. You might have forgot to put a question mark on the end of a rhetorical question. Just always leave time for a bit of proofreading. How's your work marked? So you're awarded marks for assessment objective 5, which is communication and organisation, and assessment objective 6, vocabulary, sentence structure, spelling and punctuation. In component 2, AO5 is marked out of 12 and AO6 is marked out of 8. So for things like the words you use, the sentence structure, the spelling and punctuation, there's quite a lot of marks on the line. Remember, getting the basics, things like full stops and capital letters, is just as important as trying to include some of the more complex sentences that you might want to go at. Aim to include an accurate range of sentence types and vocabulary. But remember, get your punctuation and stuff like that right, and don't make silly errors, really. And you're going to just keep sort of clocking up those marks, I guess. So your checklist for improving writing then. So first of all, have you planned your work? Secondly, is your work detailed enough? Remember about those 300 to 400 words that you're aiming for. Have you considered language that's used to suit purpose and audience. So if it's persuasive, a persuasive task, rather, have you used persuasive language features? Is your work carefully structured for maximum effect? So, where have you placed your most controversial or your best idea that you've got? Have you tried to vary punctuation for effect? So, work out, can I get a semicolon in? How can I get one semicolon into my writing to say I've used one? How can I get that question mark in? Can you use ellipses? Can you use a bracket? Can you use a dash somewhere? Okay. And it all adds up to the thing that you're aiming for, really, which is marks, as if I had to tell you that. And then have you proofread? For just, I've put silly errors because they are silly errors. You don't deliberately go out to spell it wrong. You don't deliberately go out to end a rhetorical question with a full stop. But if you've got a minute or two at the end, just check. You just might have done it. Exams are very sort of pressured things, aren't they? So that was my video. I've said and a lot in this video, but I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's proved some form of useful. And there should be a bit on the end there that says, thanks for listening. There we are. And I really hope it helped.